And before we answer this question, we're going to write a couple of notes. And we're going to start off when the index is odd. Examples of this are like the cube root of 8, the cube root of negative 8, the fifth root of 32, and the fifth root of x. When the index is odd, the radicand, remember that's the inside of the radical, can be positive or negative. In other words, something like the cube root of x, we would say, is always defined. And in mathematics, when we say something is defined, it sort of means it's always possible. So maybe I put in brackets here, possible. Because this question right now is asking for which values of the variable is it defined? When is it possible? When is it not possible? So if you have an odd index, your life is easy. It's always defined. You can take the cube root of negative 2.725 on your calculator, and your calculator is happy. You can take the seventh root of 4.82 minus 13.782, and it will be happy and spit out an answer. But when the index is even, the radicand cannot be negative. So if you try to do the square root of negative 3, your calculator is going to get mad at you. It's going to be like, error. It's not going to be happy whatsoever. And it even means like, if I had the fourth root of 20, no problem. But if I have the fourth root of negative 3, it's going to come up with an error. And so when we have the sixth root of x, this means in order for it to be defined, x has to be bigger than or equal to 0. Otherwise, we're going to get a problem. Because you can't square root, fourth root, sixth root, a negative number. And we're learning certain things in mathematics aren't allowed. Maybe you learned in the past you're not allowed to divide by 0. You're not allowed to take the square root of a negative. Next year, you're going to find out you're not allowed to take the logarithm of a negative. And you're like, I don't even know what a logarithm is. Right? But you're going to learn you can't take the logarithm of a negative. There's certain things that you are not allowed to do. I actually think it would be kind of fun to invent a calculator that if you put in something you're not allowed, when you push the equal sign, it gives you just a tiny electric shock. Something that just makes you jump a little. Not like, not going to take years off your life or anything. Just something that scares you just a little bit to remind you, yeah, like right now your calculator is so nice. It's like, oh, non-real answer, error. It tells you something like that, right? You probably learn a little bit, a little electric shock sometimes. That might be a good thing. Like, oh, I guess I'm not allowed to do that. Try the square root of negative 3 push equals. Just, yeah, I think I'd probably get fired. There'd probably be some sort of student rights advocate out there that say that's not good for students. Anyways. Okay, so Now we have this idea in place. Let's look at part A. For which values is the radical defined? And in part A, we have a square root, so we know that it can only be positive. And inside we have this square root of 45a squared. Oh, am I looking at the wrong? Oh, I'm looking at 4. I was looking at 4. Square root of 27x squared. Well, basically the same idea, just instead of an a, we have an x. So we have a square root. It can't be negative. Is there any value of x that if you put in, the inside would be negative? Because those will be bad. Right? What would you like to try?
To get the end result negative within there, just put in any x that is negative.
So if I put in a -2, what's going to be the inside of this square root once I'm done simplifying? -2 squared is 4, and 4 times 27 is 108. Can I take the square root of 108? Yes, so that's allowed. So -2 would be allowed. Is there anything that's not allowed? 0. If I plug in 0, 0 squared is 0, 27 times 0 is 0. Are you allowed to take the square root of 0? Check your calculators. Give you electric shock. Or does it give you an answer? It's 0. Because 0 times 0 is still 0. So we can take the square root of 0. Okay, so that was a good check, though. Checking 0 is always a brilliant idea to find if things work. So we tried a number, -2 worked, 0 worked. Is there anything that won't work? Well, we tried -2, it worked. But is there another negative number that won't work? Well, negative infinity is not a number. Anything will work. So we say we would say that x is always defined. And the way that we say that x is always defined is we write the domain by saying x belongs to all the real numbers. There's not a single real number that we can't put in. Does it make sense? And usually with these questions, you're going to test 0, you're going to test positive numbers, and you're going to test negative numbers. Like if I test a negative number, when I square it, it becomes positive. So I'm fine for what's inside here. When we look at part B has the 4th root of -12x cubed. Okay, and just you're not going to do this on a test or anything, but it helps you understand. Let's find some numbers that work. Let's find some numbers that don't work. Let's start with 0. Can you do 0? Does it work? If I put x as 0, I get 0 cubed, which is 0 times -12 is 0. Can you cube root 0? Yes. So 0 works. We'll just make a list. Can you tell me another one? You know what the beautiful thing about this list is you can tell me any number. Pick a number. Not too big mental math-wise. 3. Okay? And the nice thing about picking any number is it's either going to be in the works column or doesn't work column. If I plug in 3, 3 cubed is 27. 27 times -12. -324 or something like that. Can you 4th root a negative number? No, so 3 is bad. Can you tell me another number? -1. If I do -1 cubed, -1 times -1 times -1 gives me -1. Times -12 gives me +12. -1 would fit into this category. And we could keep trying. Someone says, oh, I tried 5. 5 didn't work. Someone says, I tried -2. Oh, -2 worked. What about 7? Oh, 7 didn't work. Oh, maybe it's the odd numbers. 4? No, 4 didn't work either. But -3 worked. And someone said, I tried negative 1,001. Good for you. That worked. And all of a sudden you start to think, well, I'm going to try an idea of something positive. Anything positive cubed will be positive. And then I take that positive number, multiply by a negative, then I get a negative number. And then I can't fourth root it. And then I find out over here, anything negative cubed is going to be negative. But then that negative is going to get multiplied by negative 12. It's going to become positive.
More specifically, anything negative and 0.
Anything negative and 0. So how do we write that? We would write that x has to be less than or equal to 0. And that is where it's defined. So we're really looking at an idea of domain. Where does it work? Where does it not work? And you're going to find out with square roots, because they're flip-flop at the positives and negatives, that's what you're going to be checking. All right, questions to practice on this one? Our number is just number 6. We're going to do example 4 right away.